Good day. Time makes fools of us all. Doom 3 is turning 20 years old! I knew I was getting old when Doom 3 got its own source port. I was like, I can't be that old. I was a teenager when that game came out. But yes, now I'm 35, and now Doom is old. Doom 3 is my favorite Doom game of all time, and one of my favorite games in general of all time. I played it on the Xbox, I played it on the PC, I even got that bloody thing working on a Chromebook. Now sadly, the internet has started to turn against Doom 3, saying it's not really Doom. Well, today, we're going to take a deep dive and see if it really is Doom.
Doom 3 was developed by the True id Software and published by Activision for PC on August 3rd, 2004. 20 years ago. The Xbox version, thankfully, is not yet 20 years old, so I don't feel quite so ancient. It was ported by Vicarious Visions and released on April 3rd, 2005. Later, we would get an updated re-release called Doom 3 BFG Edition, and that was developed by id Software and published by Bethesda and released on October 16th, 2012 for PC and all major consoles. Current year consoles would get a report on July 26th, 2019, thus making the BFG Edition the most common version available today in the space future of 2024. I'm gonna jump ahead and say that the BFG Edition is perfectly adequate. I did a video in 2012 complaining about how basic of a remaster it was, but as I grew older, I realized that it was better to have epic games like Doom 3 available versus not, and so while the BFG Edition is a bit of a downgrade in some ways, it still will give you a satisfactory Doom 3 experience no matter what system you play it on. You happy console pets? Console cool guys? Hell, even I was a peasant at one point in my life. My PC back in the early 2000s was able to run AVP 1 and 2, but it was not awesome enough to run Doom 3, and thus I became a loyal Xbox man, and that system allowed me to play all the PC greats of the early 2000s. Even when I started making YouTube videos, I was still rocking that old Xbox version of Doom 3. In fact, longtime fans of the channel will remember that my first review of Doom 3 was of the Xbox version, and I am glad that tech has advanced, lads and lasses, because playing the Xbox version through a dazzled DVC 100 was tough. Today, I'm going to be showing footage from the original PC release being played with the Doom 3 source port. Damn, I'm old, and we'll cover that, the source port, not my age, later in the video. The BFG edition, the Xbox version, and the PC version being played with two different graphical mods. And thanks to this being the future, it was all way easier to record. Now this might surprise you, but Doom 3 is a first-person shooter, and it is a first-person shooter that is able to blend the fast-paced running-on gameplay of the first two episodes of original Doom with a spooky atmosphere, compelling and deep narrative that does not overstay its welcome or get in the way of the demon blasting. Now, like any game of its badass era, you got all your weapons on your person at any one time, and these are some of the best weapons in all of first-person shooting. You start out with your fists, and they're never used much. The only time you'll ever do the old punchy is when you pick up the Berserk power-up, and this power-up appears a grand total of 2 times in the entire game. But man, when you pick up this power-up, it's pretty bloody awesome. If you thought the Berserk power-up in Doom 2016 was cool, this one is just a little bit better. When you pick it up, you're able to punch everything to death, and that means Hell Knights too, and there's this weird scream that plays. You got your pistol, and it's of a cool and unique design, and while it's not used much, you can use it to conserve the ammo in your more useful weapons while fighting the goddamn trites and mites. The Doom 3 shotgun has had a bit of a bad rap thanks to the memes. The BFG edition changes its sound effect to try and make it sound tougher, but I always love the original. This shotty is not quite as powerful as the original 93 shotgun, but it's an essential tool in your arsenal. It can 1 or 2 shot enemies at close range, and since this game is more or less CQB Simulator 2004, it comes in handy for the entire game. The design is pretty good, but it has some flaws. The receiver is mirrored, and it looks like it should be a semi-auto since it has a charging handle. Still, it's a memorable design all the same. Next, we got a machine gun. Oh, lay off ATF. Not everything is a machine gun, you bastards. The submachine gun here is a great counterpart to the shotgun. The shotty is good for close encounters of the 6.66 kind, and the subgun is good for reaching out and touching the demons in the worst possible way. And these are two of the weapons you'll be using the most throughout the game. The subgun was based on the then new FNP90 and thus has a 60 round mag, and unlike the P90, has an awesome ammo counter. The design is nice and futuristic and is my second favorite weapon design in the game. Next, we got the heavies. Most of the time you'll be facing basic foot soldatons, but as you progress in the game, you'll start facing more and more heavy enemies, and they are balanced accordingly. You could kill a heavy enemy with a shotgun, but you'd blow through all your ammo and get really hurt while doing it. And so when you face tougher enemies, you gotta choose your heavy weapons wisely, as choosing poorly can make you end up with negative 666 health. Your first heavy is a gun of many barrels. It sounds great and can chew through weaker heavies. Next, you got my favorite plasma rifle in all of Doom. This thing looks amazing with all sorts of little greebling on it and is by far my favorite weapon design in the entire game. It even sounds cool too, and it's good for blasting mid-range heavies and clearing out the little bastards. Next, we got the rocket launcher. It's good for the big boys, and when I reviewed this game back in 2009, I joked about the weapon's description. The game says the rocket launcher was used for clearing debris, and I said, I want to be the Rocket Man. Little did I know that just a few years later, I would be a Rocket Man in a little game called Minecraft. Yeah, rocket launchers are great for clearing land for the next great building in that game. Finally, you got the BFG 9000! This is my favorite BFG in all of id Software as well. It's got a cool design that is not just metal vomit, a great sound, and it's a prototype, meaning that all the bugs have not yet been worked out. If you hold down the trigger too long, you will explode! The BFG is not used as much as I would like, and it's good for Hell Knights, but you cannot use it on the final boss, because we got the Soul Cube. This weapon is acquired late game and is powered up by killing enemies, and when you use it, it will give you health in addition to one-shotting an enemy. Cool concept, but sadly ruins the final boss battle. On Nightmare difficulty, you get to use it when you start the game, as you will only have 25 health, and you have to use the Soul Cube to heal. A cool concept to say the least. The chainsaw. It's great for ripping and tearing foot soldiers and some mid-range enemies. A new one. In the 09 review, my grandfather cameoed for the first time in any of my reviews, and he was there to help me get a real-life chainsaw started up. The joke was that chainsaws are hard to start up in real life. Since his passing in 2023, whenever I use the chainsaw in Doom 3, I think of those heady days of youth. Eventually, I would get him a new chainsaw for Father's Day 2013, and it was way easier to start than that old one. You get some grenades in the game, and they are almost useless unless you master timing and throwing. You can blow yourself up real easy with these bastards as they bounce all around, and in addition to this, they have a tendency to roll back right in front of your bloody face. But if you master cooking them off, they are pretty good for early boss encounters. This is the arsenal by which all others are judged. So, the cyber demon in the room is the bloody flashlight. The memes make Doom 3 out to be all darkness and disappointment due to this bloody thing. But man, the flashlight's great! In this game, we finally got lighting technology good enough that there are true dark areas, meaning you gotta have a flashlight. And since this was 2004 we're talking about, weapon lights and blue LEDs were a thing of even further in the future than the 22nd century. Mars bases, teleporters. Shit, son, that's easy. A flashlight you have on your gun? Tech sorcery. Heresy! Destroy it! So, since you don't have a Chinese $30 light from Amazon easily attached to an M-Lock or 1913 rail, what do you have? Why, it's a mag light! Yes, in the 22nd century, you have a non-LED mag light that you carry around, and you have to swap between it and your weapon in order to see. You could do the bashy, but that'll get you killed. It might be silly by today's standards that a 22nd century space military would still be using mag lights, but it works in the game, and it does ratchet up the tension as you explore dark and dank areas, waiting for that moment when you have to hastily switch to your shotty to deliver some divine intervention. The Xbox version of the expansion pack, Resurrection of Evil, would mount the flashlight to a pistol and make fighting back a little easier. You know, I bet the guy who invented that in the Doom 3 universe made more money than Bill Gates for that truly transcendent innovation. In the BFG edition, they bump up the gamma and give you an alien-style shoulder lamp that has a battery life worse than a $5 cheap Chinese flashlight from Temu. But hey, at least it's progress, right? All told, I love the flashlight as it does give the game a bit of tension that other FPS games lack. This is a game from 2004, and thus you don't aim down sights, although you can zoom in, and it does help when fighting distant enemies. Gameplay for Doom 3 is much faster than many of the memes make it out to be. There is very little dead space where you're not fighting something, and the game has been properly balanced, and you never face so many enemies that you get overwhelmed or bored. You always feel a little bit of tension, but it's never to the player's detriment, and you are always getting that id tickled. Most of the time, you will be blasting bastards, but there are a few minor objectives to complete, and these little objectives are important as they provide context for what you're doing, so you don't get bored just shooting the same bastards over and over again. And the game encourages exploration. The more you explore, the more weapons and ammo you can get. The game features storage lockers, and you have to find PDAs to get the locker codes. The more you hunt for PDAs, the easier the game gets. The game also features key codes for objectives, and the game does not always put the PDA with the code right next to the door, so keep your eyes peeled. So yeah, PDAs, or Personal Data Assistants. Back in the before times, when the very idea of a smartphone was something that you could only get in the year 1 million, PDAs were a thing. Basically, think of a tablet computer, but with less ability to do anything. The idea that 22nd century humanity is still using these things is a little silly, but the idea of corporate issuing these is still relevant. Bring your own device is a thing in real life, but it's a security nightmare, so I could see the Union Aerospace Corporation confiscating phones or not allowing them at all and then issuing basic devices like this in order to keep stuff secure. Or at the very least, less unsecure? All those people recording their passwords on the devices is sadly all too real, but I get it. There are a shit ton of passwords to remember, and you gotta write them down somewhere. In the game, you carry a PDA and you can read emails and playback audio logs, and this is primarily how the story is delivered, and it is extremely immersive, and you can get killed reading the bloody PDA, so you better keep your ears perked up too. The voice acting and writing for these emails and audio logs are top tier, and the best part of the PDA is that you, the player, immerse yourself in the universe of Doom 3 instead of the devs regurgitating the story and lore via long-winded cutscenes, and thus you feel like you are a part of the story. Id might dunk on stories, but when they set out to make one, they do a bang-up job. Enemies this time around are primarily reimagined classics. You get the Zombie Man in 3 different flavors. You got basic melee, Z-Sec, which is super cool. They have demonic voices coming out of the radios, and their eyes are all messed up, and are pretty tough foes. And finally, the demonic zombie. They got hentai tentacles and miniguns, and are pretty hard to put down. You got the Imp, he is super scary, although when I first played Doom 3, I wanted the original Imp, but scarier. These days, I appreciate what they did with this enemy, and I love him. The Lost Soul returns, but he's more of a rocket skull, which is kinda cool because that's how the Lost Soul was described in the original Doom novelization. Pretty much all the other enemies from Doom 1 and Doom 2 make a return, and they're pretty much like they were in those earlier games, just a little scarier and a little cooler. 2 new enemies introduced in Doom 3 are the Mites and the Trites. These bastards are the hardest enemies in the entire godforsaken game. They come in huge bloody numbers, and while they're easy to kill individually, they make you expend your precious ammo, and when they do hit you, they do a bunch of damage, and it's hard to prepare for them as they can kind of come out of nowhere. This arena right here is the hardest part of the game, and I still die here at least once or twice. Now, by far the creepiest enemy in the game and in all of Doom is the Cherub. It's a little infant with a lobster claw that does a crap ton of damage. They make super creepy sounds and are very hard to hit. This is a truly horrifying enemy, mainly because it just comes out of nowhere. The Mancubus, well, it's some flabby bastard, but a baby with a lobster claw? Now that's something else entirely. No other Doom game would go this far to scare the player, and I gotta say, the early 2000s was the best in terms of enemy design. The enemies as a whole are some of the best in all of first-person shooting. We got no bullet sponges, they've got plenty of animations and attacks, and they will ensure that you will keep coming back for decades to come. With that in mind, this is one of the few god-tier FPS games that does have proper replayability. You can jump to just about any level and get to blasting, and this is one of the FPS games I replay the most and is the go-to when I'm on the go with the Steam Deck. So, you heard me sing its praises in 2009 and today, but is it Doom? By Talos' 5-foot-long beard, I hate clickbait, but you know, it works. Yes, of course, Doom 3 is Doom. I've been a Doom fan for over 30 bloody years. I was there 4,000 years ago in 1993 when Doom came out, and I played the original games all throughout the 90s. When Doom 3 came out, I was a teenager, and I never even once considered this game not Doom. And I, ladies and gentlemen, have been licensed and bonded by the Texas Gaming Commission to be a right and honorable Doom fan, so believe me when I say that Doom 3 is the logical evolution of the original Doom's gameplay. Even the darkness was an aspect of the original Doom. Yeah, 2D Doom did not have a flashlight, but you could get IR goggles in a couple levels, and the run and gun aspect of the game is completely unchanged. In 2005, when I played Doom 3, I was not a part of any online communities, so I don't know what people thought of the game back then. In 2009, I started to see some reviewers turn against Doom 3 for whatever reason, but to call it not Doom is to not know what Doom was in the first bloody place. I get it, the game was dark. Even my grandfather chose to pass on this game due to the darkness, but to say it bears no resemblance to the original Doom is going a bit too bloody far. Graphically, this game was jaw-dropping, and even the Xbox version looked badass, at least up through 2009. The textures in the original PC release were super detailed, and the 3D models were amazing, and so it's no wonder that my PC couldn't run it with its piddly 256 megabytes of RAM. The original PC release still looks great in 2K, although you will start to notice some weak textures here and there. The Xbox version is a bloody miracle. It looks almost as good as the original PC release, but it had to be cut down here and there. But still though, despite being cut a little bit, you still get a great experience. The BFG edition, while not looking quite as good as the original PC release, at least as the entire game, the FOV is also worse, but we do get Sweet 60, and the loading times on PC are at the very least lightning fast. So despite looking the worst, it still has that going for it. Sound is just as amazing as the graphics. Take a listen. Second to none in terms of atmosphere. The bloody Xbox version goes one step beyond and has creepy sounds play in the menus. The BFG edition has slightly compressed sounds because it has to run on everything, but it's not the worst, and unless you're not like me, you won't even notice. Music for the game is atmospheric, but the title track Tweaker is a classic of the highest order, and I cannot count how many times I've rocked out to it. And Mick Gordon even gave the track a shout out in his seminal Doom 2016 OST. Man, when I heard that the original PC release was getting a bloody source port, I knew I was getting old. Doom 3 was no longer current, and now so old like the original Doom it needs a source port to run on modern systems? What happened? Where did the time go? Doom 3 is the primary source port for Doom 3, although there is one other, but I think development on it ceased as I've not heard anything about it in quite a while. Doom 3 allows you to play the game with modern screen resolutions, fixes the sound, and ensures Sweet 60 on the modern PC. It also has a Linux version that works on the Steam Deck, and I even got that version working on a Chromebook. Yes, I am that much of a Doom 3 superfan. The only downside to Doom 3 is that it's not compatible with a number of mods, as many mods require the use of the original Doom 3 executable. You can run the Absolute HD mod with Doom 3, and holy crap, Doom 3 looks current year again. The Absolute HD also mods some of the weapon sounds, but largely leaves the game vanilla. The perfected Doom 3 mod uses the original Doom 3 executable, but it does allow you to use modern screen resolutions, and it changes a number of aspects of the game in addition to upgrading the graphics. The health system is a little different in that you now collect health kits and use them via a key press. The weapons have been tweaked and the game is a little harder. It's a damn good mod, although I could never get the audio to equalize properly, and thus some of the weapons sounded really bloody loud. There are even more mods than this, and like with the original Doom from '93, people are still modding Doom 3 to this very day. So, which version do I recommend? The PC original, the Xbox port, or the BFG edition? The Xbox version does have its merits as it has native co-op, but you gotta use X-Link Kai to get it to work, and that can be a little difficult. Modding the original PC release is easy enough, and getting it to run with Doom 3 just requires some dragging and dropping of files. But by far the easiest version of the game to play is the BFG edition. It runs right out of the box and even has good controller support. So my recommendation is the clearly superior Xbox version. Okay, while that might be my favorite, if you're really a Doom 3 noob, just go BFG, and while it's not the best looking, you don't have to configure anything, and if you're a console player on anything other than the original Xbox, it is literally the only game in town. Once you beat the BFG edition and find that you love Doom 3 as you should, give the original release a playthrough with mods. You know, if id Software wrote a prawn movie, it would make the likes of Martin Scorsese proud. What we got here is a reimagining of the classic Doom plot. You know, back when this game came out, reimaginations were all the rage. Different media took the basic elements of a classic story, tightened up a few things here and there, darkened up a few things, and basically kept the original concept intact, just filtered through what was in theory supposed to be a more polished lens. Sadly, most reanimations failed to maintain their quality, and they died when the new creators ran out of ideas to crib from. Doom 3, on the other hand, was one of the very few reimaginations to get it right. You still play as a Space Marine, and like with the original game, you are not given a name in-game and are just called Marine. The game's writer, Matthew Costello, would later pen 2 novels based upon Doom 3's story, and would give Doom 3 Guy the name John Kane, and would give him an in-depth backstory that was not present in the game itself. So now, you gotta wonder, is John Kane related to Quake 4's Matthew Kane? You never know. Doom 3 and Quake 4 could take place in the same universe, and Doom 3 could be Quake 4's prequel, and John Kane could be Matthew Kane's grandfather. Would be cool, but well, the entire plotline has long since been forgotten by anyone other than bloody nerds like myself. Doom 3 takes place on Mars instead of the moons of Phobos and Deimos, and what I find interesting is that pretty much all of Doom going forward would take place on Mars instead of either of the moons. Hell, even the shit-tier movies took place on Mars. When John Kane arrives on Mars, you have a little Alien-style slow build-up to combat. You walk through Mars City and learn that something is rotten in the state of Mars. John Kane never speaks in the game, but he does have some character. He likes to be a rowdy Roddy peeper and listen in to other people's conversations, and as he heads to Marine HQ, he stops to eavesdrop upon Dr. Betruger as he argues with 2 cool dudes named Campbell and Swan. Betruger is saying he needs more time and acts and looks creepy. Swan says he needs to hurry up with the results, you know, the usual stuff. You then get introduced to Sergeant Kelly, and he yells at you and tells you gotta find an escaped scientist, and as you make it to the scientist, the game starts to fill in some details. The people of Mars City are being run ragged by all the experiments. There are power issues, psychological issues, a random dude pops out and says that you probably don't want to find the scientist, but does not elaborate. id Software found that sweet spot when it comes to storytelling. You get a lot, but the game does not just stop to blather on about it. You finally find the scientist, and then hell invades! The hell invasion is super creepy, and it legitimately feels supernatural, or supernatural. That's like 3 levels beyond super. The scientist dude turned out to be an OnlyFans enjoyer, and then you gotta blast him. The Hell Invasion is super bloody immersive. In 2004, they could have created some super epic awesome cutscenes. Instead, what id Software chose to do is have you listen to the Hell Invasion on your radio. This is bloody genius, as it really does tell you the story of the Hell Invasion without having to take control away from you, and it makes for some really compelling storytelling. You start getting a bunch of radio messages from Marines that are under attack. There are a bunch of screams, bunch of cries for help, and dudes that need orders, and you experience all of that as you blast zombies. As the game progresses, the messages get fewer and fewer, and then there is finally silence. The only other game that would do this was the criminally underrated Quake 4. id Software did so much with so little and kept it simple but effective. Throughout the game, you'll pretty much be on your own. You will interact with a few characters, and Sergeant Kelly will be your voice with a radio transceiver for a while. In a bit of a call forward to Dead Space, Private Kane has to fix a bunch of crap in the dark, and I do wonder if Doom 3 had any influence on Dead Space, as there are a few minor similarities between the two. Eventually, you get a mission to send a transmission to the Earth fleet, and through a few wacky misadventures, you finally get ready to send the transmission and are faced with a choice. You can send the SOS or not. Kelly wants you to send it, and Campbell and Swan don't. Now, in the game, Sergeant Kelly is shown as the big good, and KNS Gas Piston are seen as possibly evil. They make the argument that no one knows what is going down in Mars City, and that if the fleet arrives to help, they will get wiped out, and their ships will be stolen by the demons and taken to Earth. Now, in reality, even if the ships did get taken, taking over the Earth would be a non-starter due to the need to have a whole bunch of troops and the logistics trained for them. But with that in mind, you still don't want a bunch of demons showing up on Earth either. I generally side with Campbell and Swan, as they do make a good point. And in the game, Kelly yells at you and says you didn't follow your orders and what else is new. So now, you gotta try and meet up with Campbell and Swan, and as you would expect, you never actually meet up with them. But you do get your next objective, and that is to get to the Delta Labs and stop the invasion. Dr. Betruger, surprise, surprise, is the game's villain? I never would have guessed. He is the mastermind behind the entire Hell Invasion. As a filthy cultist, he paved the way for the invasion and revels in his newfound power. He will taunt you and trash talk you now and again and try and gas you, but it's to no avail as you finally track him down, and apparently he has BFG-proof glass, as he just laughs at you when you shoot at him, and then sends two Hell Knights after you. This, of course, is an awesome callback to the final boss of the first Doom episode. And you know what? These Hell Knights, they ain't BFG proof. He then sends you straight to hell, son. And when I first got to this part, I literally started belting out the classic song Highway to Hell. And what a clean burn in hell it is. This is one of, if not the best depictions of hell in any game. It is legitimately creepy in a way that modern Doom's hell just can't match. This hell is dirty, nasty, and just wrong. The enemies even have hell variants, although they are uncoolly removed in the BFG edition. Damn peasants. Your objective here is to rescue the Soul Cube from the Hell Guardian. And man, is this creature spooky looking. But ultimately, he's pretty easy to defeat all the same. Once you're back on Mars, it's time for endgame. You find a roboticized Sergeant Kelly, and fan speculation has been that Kelly was a villain the entire time, but I don't buy that. He does try and help you earlier in the game, and I just think he got captured by the demons and turned into what is called Saboth. And in many ways, this can kind of be considered a call forward to Quake 4 and Prey 2006, as in those games you have to put down a roboticized ally. Eventually you learn that the Martian civilization used their collective souls to create the Soul Cube to stop a previous Hell invasion, and that the guy that used the Soul Cube looked an awful lot like the Doomslayer. He used the Soul Cube to seal Hell off from the material universe, and at the end of the game, you find the Chamber of the Hero, where a certain someone is in a cursed sarcophagus. Is that the Doomslayer? Only time will tell. So, disappointingly, you never fight Betruger, and your final boss fight is with the Cyber Demon. He's bloody huge, but you can't hurt him. Instead, you hit him 3 times with the Soul Cube, the end. I get what id Software was going for here, and in theory, it's a good idea. In games, the final boss fight should be too tough for you to take on. You know, you got guys in power armor, great demons of Kanagarach, and, you know, all you've got is a 12-gauge shotgun, and you gotta ask, is that all it takes to take down the Supreme Dude Bro of the Old Republic? A 12-gauge shotgun? I get that 12 gauge is powerful, but that's no tank or nuke. id Software probably thought logically that the Cyber Demon should be a mixture of paranormal and technological, and that it is so powerful that even a BFG could not stand against it, and thus it only logically made sense that the Soul Cube would be the only way to bring it down, and, you know, that would work in a movie or book. But despite its underwhelming conclusion, the day is saved, and John Kane lives to fight another day. The end. Doom 3 would spawn a direct sequel in the form of an expansion pack called Resurrection of Evil. Here, you play as a different guy, and in that game, you finally take down Betruger, and after this, there would be no more Doom 3 content, and the Doom franchise would be rebooted in 2016 with Doom 2016. But apparently, Doom 3 still exists in the Doom multiverse. The game would get a novel duology, with Book 1 being called Worlds on Fire, and Book 2 would be called Maelstrom. Despite having been written by the game's writer, the novels diverged in a number of places, and the story was not quite as good as what we got in the game. Doom 3 would be used as inspiration for the 2 Doom movies. In Doom Absolution, the main villain would be called Dr. Betruger, but Doom Guy would be replaced with Doom Girl because current year. A fan work called Doom Arenas would be produced and would continue John Kane's adventure post-Doom 3. In that fan work, John Kane would be possessed by the Soul Cube and then kidnapped by the villains from Quake 3 and forced to fight in their Bloodsport arenas. Despite this film being made on a shoestring budget, Doom Arenas would be by far the best Doom film of all time, and I've got a link in that description. Despite people sleeping on it now, Doom 3 showed that gaming could keep developing without losing sight of the player, and over the past 20 years, Doom 3 has remained my favorite Doom and id Software game of all time due to its polished gameplay, fun levels and enemies, and kick-ass presentation, and will still be my favorite for another 20.
If you haven't booted it up in a while, for shame! And it's time to boot it up with either the BFG edition or Doom 3 the source port. In any event, I am General Lotz, wishing you good Doom 3, good Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.